Welcome back. Let's move on to the big conversation number 2 with number of positive cases climbing up to 43 for coronavirus in India. Seems like the entire country is only talking about this and is really concerned. Obviously, there is a fear of being struck by the virus and what will then happen. While the centre and the state are taking all possible steps to contain the virus, there is some amount of concern and fear within people. But we decided that we will again, one more time, bring about all the unconfirmed information, bust all the myths for you and give you the information that you really need. Take a decision. Just how concerned should you be? Should you get paranoid? Is the world really witnessing some kind of mass hysteria that we should not be having? In fact, the situation is such, viewers, that the World Health Organization, the WHO, has gone on to declare this situation as an infodemic. That essentially means that there is an overabundance of information on the internet when it comes to coronavirus. This is an infodemic, and that it is hard for people to really find trustworthy sources. What's true and what's not, what's genuine and what's fake news. WHO says confusion is spreading fear, which is dangerous. Keep in mind, coronavirus has a mortality rate of 3.4%. Only 3.4% who get infected are dying of this disease so far. If you had to compare it to some of the previous outbreaks, SARS had a mortality rate of 10% and MERS was a mortality rate of 34%. So far, we don't have too many reports of anybody below the age of 9 dying from coronavirus. Some have been infected. But the number of people who are dying, despite the fact that over 1 lakh have been infected across the world, is really small. This infodemic is hitting Indians also big time. Let's try and understand, is there a need to panic for you and me, for Indians? Here are some of the facts that we have. There is no Indian patient right now who is in a critical state. In fact, we do know that in Kerala, the first 3 patients who had tested positive for coronavirus actually have already recovered and discharged from the hospital. Again, I will say this, compare this to what happened in 2003 when the SARS epidemic broke out and it killed about 1,000 people across the world. Nobody has died yet of coronavirus in our country. And we're not just talking about deadly outbreaks. There are many other diseases, common diseases in our country that are actually claiming far more lives on an annual basis. I'm just going to put some figures in perspective. I'm not saying we shouldn't be concerned. I'm not saying we shouldn't be precautious and that we shouldn't watch out and protect ourselves. I'm simply saying that in our country, 132 people died of dengue in 2019 and about 1,218 people died of swine flu. So tonight, let's try and get some information that's required to stay safe. But let's not get hysterical about this. That's the only point that I want to make. Let's say good evening to our panelists, our experts who are joining us. Dr. Vikas Maurya, Director of Additional and Head of Department for Department of Pulmonology and Sleep Disorders at Fortis. Dr. Sanjeev Mehta, as well as Dr. Arjun Dang, CEO of Dr. Dang's Lab, joins us this evening. Let me actually start with Dr. Sanjeev Mehta to get a sense of just how concerned should be. Dr. Mehta, are we looking at a situation where there is mass hysteria which isn't required, globally and in our country?
Yeah. Hi, Tanvi, good evening, and thank you again for having me. I completely agree with what you have started. I think you started it extremely well. You said it very well. It's an infodemic. So you've put the numbers out there, and I'd like to rephrase them a little bit as you rightly did. One is that I think it's a very infectious virus. A lot of people are getting the infection, but it is not a high impact mortality virus. In fact, whatever information I have and what's out there on the WHO and CDC websites is that it seems not even that many people are falling that seriously ill. I agree that the total number of deaths may be high, but that's on a base of a very large number of infected patients. So please don't get scared by those numbers, but focus on the number which you rightly said was the mortality of about 3%. In fact, my own take on this is that the mortality is much lower because even though we are having 3,000 deaths on 100,000, so that's 3%. But for every 1% who's tested, 1%, I'm sure there is a large number who could either not be traced and tested or there weren't enough testing equipment. So if you were to actually see the number of people which I feel are infected, I think that number would be much lower. And so while we are going to have a large number of infections, but that's not morbidity, that's not death, so one should not be worried to that extent. That being said, what you said correctly is that we should be careful, we should put precautions, and you brought out another number, and I'm not so sure if that number is very accurate, but I think more people die of TB in an hour. I think it's one death every 10 minutes or so, and that's what is one of the diseases we need to be really worried about. We should be careful, but not panic about the coronavirus just yet.
Okay.
I hope that answers.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And thank you, for putting it out there for our viewers to also try and understand this. The other argument then, and let me take this point to Dr. Vikas Maurya. Dr. Maurya, the other thing that people say is, but, in comparison to maybe even TB or dengue or malaria that's claiming lives in our country, here there is no cure. We don't know what medicine will cure somebody who has this infection. So obviously there will be some amount of paranoia. What do you say to that?
Yeah, exactly. That is what causing people, panic at the moment. But I think there is no need to panic. As is already been told by you, the number of people who have died, are far less than what we have seen with SARS, what we have seen with MERS, or what we are seeing with, every day or other day with TB or many other diseases. The only thing is that because there is no vaccine, there is no treatment, but we have to go with the symptomatic treatment. And most of these cases are mild cases or moderate cases. There are very, very little who have a severe cases, and those who require, critical care or ICU care. At the moment, what we see, only 13% at the moment are requiring, ICU critical care, and of those, what we see in the mortality is around between 3 to 4%. So I think just we have to understand that this is usually a coronavirus is a normal respiratory virus, and at the moment, because we have a new strain which is more virulent, and that's why it's spreading fast, causing more number of people having infections. But it is not cause, it doesn't cause so much of death among the patients, and therefore we should not panic about.
Okay, so let's put it this way, Dr. Dang. If in my city there are some reports that have been confirmed, and the authorities are still trying to find out where these people traveled, where they may have visited, who may have come in contact, and I don't know, then what do I do? Do I stop stepping out of my home? Should I wear a mask and roam around? What should an average person in Bengaluru or Delhi or even in Jammu do?
So thanks, Tanvi, for the question, and thanks for having me once again. So the question that you've asked is very relevant, and this is what everyone needs to know. So when we talk about the infectious stages of this particular disease, there's an individual level where a single person is getting affected. Then there's a cluster level where you get a group of people who are affected, like the Italians who were found to be positive. And then there's the community level. Luckily and fortunately, India till now hasn't reached the community level. So absolutely the only way of transmission that is known right now is through droplets. It's through someone coughing, someone sneezing. So everything that everyone already knows about, hand hygiene, preventing close contact with anyone who's coughing, sneezing, avoiding overcrowded places is at top of the list for the prevention strategy right now. The impact of the virus is definitely going to be controlled by the response of our citizens.
The impact of virus will be controlled by the response of our citizens, but in many places schools have been shut down, offices are being shut, And that's understandable, where places need to be sanitized, or there is a fear that perhaps there may be infection in the air, Dr. Sanjeev Mehta. But should we start cancelling our travel? Should we stop, start rethinking our visits to the airport, to the railway station, to such public places? What should we do?
Yeah. So I think, as was said, it's a very important question. How does an individual respond? At this moment, I think we should avoid very crowded places. That's one. Holi is a case in point tomorrow, when I would advise and I've put it on my page, that one should avoid getting into too many crowded areas. That's one. Second, I think it's important to avoid people who are showing signs of infection, such as people who are sneezing. I was out at a restaurant with my mother and mother-in-law yesterday, who are both over 80. The person next to us was sneezing, and that is the kind of a person I would say should be given a mask, so that that person does not spread any virus, whether it is this virus or others. So I think those are the kind of things you would like to do. We would avoid schools only if there is a known epidemic in that area. One individual case, probably, I think closing all schools in the city is a little excessive.
Okay, so how do you define that, Dr. Mehta? For the
coming
common
back,
man to understand what would be like an epidemic in a city like Delhi?
Correct. So, but before I go there, I think one thing I wanted to bring out is that I don't think the world is really clear how different communities are responding to the infection. For example, the total number of cases in Korea, I think, are exactly the same as they were in Italy. However, Italy has shown a higher mortality rate than there is been in Korea. And I just don't know whether we have the answer to why some predisposition is either to the area or to the people, or whether that was an older population than Korea. I really don't have a good answer to that. I think we need to keep our eyes and ears open for that kind of information when it becomes available. Which schools we would shut down, which areas, I think when the number gets a little higher than this, and for that we'll have the national health authorities will tell us. But if there is a single case, well controlled, 3 patients in Kerala, I really don't know whether it is the right time to close all schools around that. Don't have a good answer, I really don't, but I think the local municipal authorities should get together, do contact tracing, and maybe they would be able to finally decide which is a correct response. But all of us need to avoid very crowded, unnecessary travel. I'm traveling tomorrow on the flight. I hope it'll be good, but I'm not too worried.
Okay, I just want to put it out there for our viewers. Here is a doctor who understands the situation really, really well, and is still going to be traveling tomorrow. So maybe that will also help, some of our viewers calm down. Everywhere you go right now, there are conversations about this. Like Dr. Mehta was saying, we don't really know how different communities, different segments of people and their bodies are reacting to this virus, why some may be more vulnerable than the others, including people from different countries. There is a lot that you get on WhatsApp. It says, oh, maybe Indians are little bit more immune, Dr. Maurya, because we already live in conditions that are relatively more unhygienic. We already eat water and consume eat food and consume water, which is relatively perhaps more unhygienic than the rest of the world. So our bodies may be more immune to this virus and we can fight back. Does that make sense?
No, actually, I don't think so. That is a different kind of theory, which I don't agree with.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is that at the moment, what we have seen, it has not spread at the community level. So far, the government of India is able to track, more than lakh of cases. So what we are tracing, we are doing at the source control. So that's why it has not spread so far. All the cases are being tracked. They are on the surveillance so far, and whosoever having history of contact and who has traveled abroad and having signs and symptoms, they are being tested. So at the moment, things are being done at a very fast level and at a very good pace level. So therefore, at the moment, but we are not seeing that we are having so much of, patients at the moment. Plus, their precautions are being taken care of at airports, at seaports, and all other ports of entry. So by saying that, because we have a better immunity, I don't, agree with that, because in case, if you see, we have so many, infectious diseases in our country, in our, states. So if we had a good immunity, we will not have those infection also. Why only coronavirus? So, I don't agree with that.
Okay, point well taken. Now I want to go on to the next aspect, and Dr. Mehta briefly touched upon it. Let's go into more details of what happens tomorrow. The big concern, the big conversation point and talking point is, should you or should you not be playing Holi this year, a festival widely either loved or hated in our country, depending on what kind of a person you are. But many are actually this year not celebrating Holi. And some of the concerns that people have, concern number one is use of colors. And many say because these are manufactured in China and imported from China, where coronavirus comes from, we shouldn't be using these colors. Others are saying use of water guns, which are manufactured in China, and so we shouldn't be using these water guns as well. And that there is a increasing risk of virus infection at public places, outside, and there is absolutely no reason why we should risk playing this festival. In fact, I must also say that the Prime Minister, the Home Minister, and the BJP President and many other leaders have actually already said that they will not be participating in any mass public gathering on the occasion of Holi. But what if you had to do it with some precautions, and not maybe go to a place with 5,000 people? Can you play Holi? Can you play colors, use colors, or just water? I simply have that question. Dr. Dang, do you want to, help us understand just what are the risks of playing this festival tomorrow?
Sure. So, as all of us know, Holi is a festival of expression of love and colors. So, let's be loving, let's be colorful, but definitely avoid overcrowded large gatherings that will lead to close contact. And although coronavirus won't spread with water, but just be careful and don't get wet, because we don't want you coughing and sneezing the next day and wearing masks and causing unnecessary stress to you and the people around you. So definitely play a dry Holi with your close family and friends. And definitely your point about the colors coming from China or the water guns being manufactured there won't at all be the primary cause that I'm telling you to avoid playing Holi. It would be more of avoiding close contact. You greet someone with a hug and you put colors on their face. So there's a lot of contact, a lot of touching on the face, etc. when you put the gulal. So I would definitely advise against all of that. Be innovative. Maybe colorful clothes is the way. Maybe colorful flowers is a way. So let's not go on putting colors on each other's faces and all of that just for this time.
Just for more clarity on that, Dr. Dang, this concern that people have that the colors and the water guns are coming from China and they may carry the virus. For how long does this virus stay on any kind of surface? Is that possible, that because we got these stuff from China, it carries the coronavirus?
So Tanvi, when we talk about the virus lasting on surfaces, it depends on three things. Depends on the temperature, the humidity, and also the kind of surface which we are talking about. So the virus definitely has a shelf life of a few hours, but these things coming from China and then going through a long time lapse, I don't think there is a high probability that the virus will last on it. So that's not something to be concerned about. But definitely, like I said, the close contact and the large gatherings with someone sneezing around you, etc., is of primary concern at this point of time.
Okay. Would you agree, Dr. Sanjeev Mehta, if somebody does love the Festival of Colors, what are their options right now?
Yeah, I have clearly, I have told all my patients, and I put it up on the website, that I would advise my patients to stay away for the reason that one of the earlier speakers correctly said. Imagine somebody who already has a predisposition to an infection. Now, this particular individual goes and plays Holi, gets color in the nose, starts sneezing. Or gets wet, and children get wet for say a few hours and then they get a cold. Two things happen: a, you create fear, and two, by weakening your own immune system, you're allowing other viruses to get in. So I am a little more circumspect about people getting a, close to each other, and b, getting along with water and color. So I would like to tell them that please stay away, at least at this time. We'll think about it probably next year as far as this is concerned. As far as your previous question was concerned, if I may come back to it, rather than me suggesting that you lock down a school, I think it's very important to show self-control. So if in an office or in a school, a child or a person has symptoms of coryza, which is cold, cough and everything, I would rather that that individual locks himself at home and do self-quarantine than go out and say, oh my God, I have to show my attendance and then infect others, even if it is not the novel coronavirus, but there could be other viruses that he's spreading. So self-lockdown is a much better, or self-quarantine, I think, is a much better approach than closing schools and colleges and workplaces. So that's
okay. Now, while in an ideal scenario, I would completely agree with you and say that yes, this is how this country should move forward. But you know what's happening in our country? I have at least 2 different instances, if not 3, where coronavirus suspected patients ran away from the hospital. They just ran away before the test results could come in, and then the police had to be informed and a complaint had to be filed and people had to go looking for them and get them from wherever they were. And in such a scenario, Dr. Vikas Maurya, what can we do? Do we need to then be extra precautious and say, no, let's just shut down some of these tourist destinations, some of the schools, because, well, in our country, people just don't want to take the precautions where it's necessary.
Hello.
Yes, Dr. Maurya, question to you.
मुझसे क्वेश्चन पूछ रहे थे, कट गया एकदम.
Okay, I think we've lost his line. I'm going to patch that line back, but let me take that question back to Dr. Sanjeev Mehta then.
Yeah, I know. That's a very tough question, what you asked. There are people who run away from hospitals. I personally am not in favor of locking down people, but that's a very challenging thing, because you start chasing them down, it only creates more fear and people start to run away even further. People go into hiding and that would be more harmful. We need to have a much better education, a better educated discussion, close dialogue with our patients and tell them that it is in their interest and the interest of their loved ones and the community to not run away from being talked to or being isolated. So I think we need a better conversation and less fearful approach. People would then probably participate more in this. It's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah, it's beyond me and my comprehension why anybody would run away from a hospital, but unfortunately that has happened twice now in 2 different instances in our country. Here is the other aspect that I wanted to talk about, Dr. Dang. The WHO, which while declaring this as an infodemic, also told us that look at the statistics, that the mortality rate is only 3.4, and that also, and this high rate is also coming in because in Wuhan, in the early stages of the outbreak, the mortality rate was 17.3. So effectively, if I had to keep that province out of this equation, it's not even 1% of the people who are dying out of this. So then the obvious question that anybody will ask is, well, how is that happening? Because we don't even have a cure or a proper medicine. So how is it that the less number of people are dying because of this virus?
Tanvi, thanks for the question. So, the knowledge pool is ever evolving. Every hour that the virus is prevalent, we are learning new things. But like Dr. Mehta also said, that in children, it is extremely low, as in it has an extremely low mortality rate. Maybe children are getting affected, but they're fighting the virus well, or maybe the virus is not affecting children at all. So when we divide the bucket of people in two age groups, that is less than 60 and more than 60, less than 60 is less than 1% mortality. I read somewhere it was 0.2%, and more than 60 is where it is close to 2.53%. So definitely the immunocompromised people, the elderly people are more at risk, and they need to be more cautious at this point in time. And moving forward, we are going to learn more about the disease itself and the varying mortality over different subcontinents and countries. We will get more information as we go on.
All right, I also want to go across to some of our viewers who are calling us with more queries, because obviously, like I said, this is an infodemic where there is so much information available that sometimes it just becomes difficult to understand what's true and what's not, and what we should actually take seriously and what not. I believe Shalini is on the phone line calling us from Faridabad. Shalini, good evening.
Good evening. Actually, I'm not a doctor, but from what I hear and I see and I can fathom is that why are we unnecessarily traveling? People should be advised to just sit where they are sitting unless it is really required to travel. The forms tell you to fill in various details. The reason for travel should be one more detail, one more thing which should be required to be specified. Unnecessary travel, unnecessary moving around. You know, people traveling from countries which have this problem, it can all be stopped if we stop unnecessary travel. That is just what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Shalini, thanks so much for calling us, and putting that word out. Dr. Maurya, would you want to add to that? We lost the line with you earlier, but Shalini is what she's saying, would that be the correct way to go ahead? Just cancel your travel if it's not absolutely necessary.
Yeah, I think that would be, the way forward. I think we should avoid unnecessary travel, going abroad or, anywhere outside the country. So I think that would be a good idea in the case, because at the moment, what we are seeing more patients, who are traveling and then coming back, they are bringing the infections at the moment. And that is what we as the government is doing, tracing them. Some of them, some of them are even running away, as you said, even from the hospital. So it's better to avoid at the moment unnecessary travel and go only for those if it is very, very necessary. And just take, and also if they're going, they should take extra precautions, as has been said, just wearing the mask and cleaning your hands and by sanitizer or by soap and water, as what has been recommended. So just take those precautions if it is absolutely necessary to go.
Well, in fact, why we decided to do this conversation today was to highlight to viewers that while yes, there is a concern and the number of cases of coronavirus are only growing in our country, it's also important to know that not everybody is, going to be dying because of this. That the mortality rate is really low. And while we should be precautious, there is absolutely no need for any kind of hysterical reaction coming in. One more, aspect that I wanted to raise, and any of you can answer this question, is do we know how many of the people who have, who contracted this infection have been cured? I know of 3 cases in our country, but is there any other figure that we have worldwide to say, well, 1 lakh may have been infected, but many of them have already recovered and gone home? Dr. Mehta?
Yeah, sure. I mean, other than those who have died, everybody else has recovered. So 97,900 and so many would have recovered by now. So clearly all those, except there may be a few which are under, in hospital. So I also want to take it back to your previous point that you were raising. How come we have no medicine and people are okay with it? And the reason is because we have immunity. Time after time, every speaker has said the people who are really at risk are people who have weak immunity, which means that they cannot mount a good defense If your own immune system is good and strong, then as a part of the natural evolution, our bodies are going to develop the immunity, and that immunity is going to go, develop the antibodies, and we're going to fight the infection. Fortunately, this infection is not so virulent that it overcomes everybody's defenses. In fact, it hardly overcomes most people's defenses. It's only people who have no immunity, for example, those who have cancer, chemotherapy, steroids, very old age, other weaknesses, they are the ones who are at risk. Otherwise, we have something that is our own immune system. So that's the reason why they're getting it.
Those are
and the
two
rest of them are
extremely
recovering and going
interesting.
home. Remember, it's a 3-month-old virus.
Yes, actually those two things that you pointed out, Dr. Mehta, are extremely interesting. Where we are saying that, of course, a lot of these people who were infected have recovered already and are, back to normal life. So, and that point doesn't get highlighted enough, in the media. More than 60,000 people have recovered if 1 lakh have been infected. And unfortunately, that point doesn't get highlighted as much in media across the world. And I'm not just talking about our country. And the other part being that if your immunity is strong, that's how you will be able to fight back. It's not so difficult to fight this virus. Keep those things in mind, viewers. Yes, take all kinds of precaution if you feel that your immunity is not strong enough, or you don't want to take the risk of exposing yourself to some kind of infection, or if you have cold and if your immunity is already down and out, then yes, don't go out to public places, to mass gatherings, and stay away from the color festivals, for the Festival of Color, if possible tomorrow. Just 1 year maybe, just to be safe, because we don't know if there are others out there who have been infected but have not yet been detected. So why unnecessarily go through the entire process of being in isolation and quarantine and fighting this virus back? Again, one more point that I will highlight once again, less than 1% of the people outside of the Wuhan province in China have died because of this. 60,000 of over 1 lakh who were infected with coronavirus have already recovered and are back to normal life. Others are being treated. It may not be a specific medicine, but that doesn't mean that if you get infected, you are going to die. Yes, let's take all the precautions. Let's, any which ways, live a life which is a lot more hygienic and have a stronger immune system. But that doesn't mean that we should go into this entire trip of mass hysteria where we shut everything down. That's really not required right now. Thank you so much for joining us on this special broadcast.
हमारा मकसद यही है कि इसको फैलने से रोका जाए, और जिन लोगों के अभी तक हम ये देख रहे हैं कि जो ट्रैवल करके आए हैं बाहर से वही इन्फेक्टेड हैं, उनसे आगे इन्फेक्ट ज़्यादा नहीं हुआ है। और उसका कारण ये है कि जितने लोग उनके कांटेक्ट में आ रहे हैं उन सभी कांटेक्ट्स को तुरंत आइडेंटिफाई करके और उनको चेक किया जा रहा है। अभी ये दिल्ली के अंदर हम अब बड़े स्केल पे मुनादी भी कराएंगे लाउड स्पीकर से सभी एरियाज़ के अंदर, और खूब ज़बरदस्त तरीके से पैम्फलेट्स भी बांटेंगे, और दोनों सरकारें मिलके इसके ऊपर काम करती रहेंगी। जितने लोग आ रहे हैं वो पहली स्क्रीनिंग तो आपकी वहीं हो जाती है एयरपोर्ट के ऊपर, लेकिन उसके बाद उनको अगले 14 दिन तक दिल्ली सरकार, दिल्ली के जो लोग हैं उनके लगातार हम टच में रहते हैं, और उसमें जिनको भी सिम्टम्स दिखाई देते हैं उनकी तुरंत हम लोग टेस्ट करवाते हैं। तो अगले 14 दिन तक उनको ऑलरेडी हम लोग टच में हैं उन लोगों के। मास्क और सैनिटाइजर्स के लिए मैं फिर से क्लियर कर दूं, मीटिंग में भी ये मुद्दा उठा था। कल भी मैंने अपनी प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस में कहा था कि स्वस्थ लोगों को मास्क पहनने की ज़रूरत नहीं है। प्लीज़ आप सब ये देख रहे हैं वो ये समझ लें कि आपको मास्क की अफरा तफरी करने की ज़रूरत नहीं है। जो लोग इन्फेक्टेड हैं या जो लोग ऐसे लोगों के टच में आए जो कि इन्फेक्टेड थे, वो केवल उन्हीं लोगों को मास्क पहनने की ज़रूरत है जिनको सिम्टम्स दिखाई दे रहे हैं।
On to our story number 3 on the urban debate tonight. Even as lakhs of YES Bank depositors are still unsure about when they will be given access to their money again, a multi-agency probe is moving forward at a very, very fast pace. Of course, all of this is focused on the YES Bank founder Rana Kapoor and now his family. Let me take you through the top developments in this story for today. A multi-agency probe against Rana Kapoor has begun after the Enforcement Directorate as well as the CBI registered a case against DHFL, run by Kapil Vadhavan, Do It Urban Ventures, which is run by Rana Kapoor's daughter, Rana Kapoor himself, and some of his other family members. In fact, the YES Bank founder has been booked for cheating and criminal conspiracy. He is currently in the custody of the enforcement director. His daughter has also been questioned. In fact, yesterday she was on her way to United Kingdom and she was stopped at the airport and not allowed to fly out. A lookout notice has been issued for about 7 accused, of course, including the YES Bank founder, the DHFL promoter. There is a lookout notice against the wife and daughters of Rana Kapoor as well. Now, viewers, I'm going to move away from the basic story that we've been tracking so far about the interest of the YES Bank depositors. And while there is an indication by the YES Bank newly appointed administrator that they may raise the withdrawal limit by the end of this week itself, and one hopes that happens soon, we have to look at how we reached this point. We have to look at if there was any wrongdoing. And a lot of fingers are now being pointed at the time when Rana Kapoor was still at the helm of the affairs. Now remember, he was ousted, sacked, and thrown out. Control taken away from him over a year ago. For a year, it seems, we've just sat on this entire thing and not moved forward. But now, the initial probe is revealing a very, very dirty nexus with money laundering involved, criminal conspiracy involved, charges of corruption and insider trading, and a quid pro quo with multiple companies, shell companies, real estate companies, and financial services companies all linked together. It's very, very murky. In fact, for us to just try and understand the basic money trade and what the charges are, let's go across to Sanjana Chowhan, who joins me from our newsroom. Sanjana, let's try and decode this for our viewers.
Right, Tanvi, let me just take you through the nexus, really, the money trail of this entire thing. Now, it essentially starts with YES Bank. YES Bank gives 750 crores to RKW developers. Now, they are a real estate company. It also gives 3,700 crores to DHFL, which is owned by the Vadhavans. Now, after that, if I can just ask, RKW Developers, which is a real estate company, gives that 750 crores to DHFL, owned by the Vadhavans. Now, following that, DHFL then gives 600 crore, which is a builder loan, to Do It Urban Ventures, which is owned, the directors are none other than Rana Kapoor's daughters. One of them, of course, who was stopped at the airport. So this is the basic trail of the money trail of this entire case. And I'm also going to give you more details of the money trail and take you now through the nexus. So let's take you through that. YES Bank essentially gives 750 crores to Belief Realtors. This is controlled by the Vadhavans. Now that 632 crores of that goes to RKW, a DHFL group company. So that is a real estate firm. After that, that money is then given to Kyata Advisors, which is promoted by the Vadhavans, RIP Developers, controlled by the Vadhavans, then to DHFL, owned by the Vadhavans. So this is once again looking at the entire trail, and then 450 crores goes to Radius Group and the Paresh Shah Group, who in turn give it back to YES Bank to repay their loans. So as you can see over here, there's a very, very, well-crafted, well-organized nexus and a collusion taking place in this entire money trail, Tanvi.
All right, Sanjana, thanks so much for really decoding that and putting all the elements together on one screen for us to understand how the money went and where the favor could have been given and profits made out of that. Let's say good evening to our panelists to help us understand. Could we have averted this? Could we have stopped this much earlier, this entire web of money laundering and insider trading that everybody seems to be waking up to now? Mr. Bishwajit Bhattacharya, former ASG, joins me in our studios. Dipali Joshi, former ED of the Reserve Bank of India, and Govind Ethiraj, senior journalist and founder of India's Pen, fact-checker.in, as well as Boom, joins me this evening. And I actually want to start with Govind. In Govind, so many of these instances and scams and stories that we've covered, the format seems to be pretty much the same. Loans given by a bank, and those who approve the loans have at some point gotten the benefit of giving those loans where they shouldn't have been. A web of paper companies and money going from one place to the other. How is it that despite having seen the same format again and again, we are not able to stop this and detect this on time?
Yeah, I think most of what you're saying seems to have happened about 2 years ago, or maybe even before that. And what seems to be now so clear has perhaps already happened, and happened well before Rana Kapoor was removed in January 2019, as you said. I think I just want to make another point that you've not touched upon, but I think is being clearly spoken about, and which is the politicization of this entire problem. Now, when you politicize it and you say that, okay, this government was responsible for ensuring that this bank could freely give loans, or that government was responsible, then we lose sight of the problem. I think what we have to deal with is the megalomania of Rana Kapoor, and not whether it is a BJP problem or a UPA problem or some other government's problem. I think that distinction needs to be clear, because if we don't do that, then we're not going to fix the problem in the way that you've just highlighted it. Secondly, I think there is a trust and talent issue. I think even in January 2019, when there was an opportunity to create a circle of trust around the bank, I don't think either the bank or the Reserve Bank succeeded or managed to do that. And I think that could have been done in a manner that, let's say, if you were to look at the the famous Satyam computer takeover, and then handing over to Mahindra's, and the manner that it was managed in, by creating trustworthy people who in turn could help in fundraising or could lend their weight behind the fundraising. So I think that's another lesson to learn, that even while knowing that there was a problem more than a year ago, and because remember that Ravneet Gill came in January 2019. If he came in 2019, the entire system, including the markets, knew about it for a good year before that.
Yes.
So the quality of talent and leadership, I think, in that transition phase clearly is at question. And if that was in place, they could have clearly raised the funds, which they were trying to do. For whatever reason, on at least 4 attempts, they failed. And that seems to have led to another set of problems. And finally, I think the quality of oversight and the quality of, let's say, understanding of balance sheets and the way funds are flowing is clearly a weak point with our regulators. It's not, I think whenever someone wants to do something wrong, or wants to do maybe what is allegedly kickbacks into private companies or into family companies, I think they're able to do it very easily. I think we are seeing the same pattern. But I think bear in mind that most of what you're seeing it is linked to excesses, perhaps in real estate and in maybe highly liquid markets, and all seem to have happened at a certain phase about roughly between 3 to 2 years ago.
Yes, absolutely. And Govind, for the reason that you just highlighted, that if we start talking about the politicization of the story, we kind of get distracted from the main issue and the core issue at hand. Exactly the reason why, we're not sitting here and obsessing about a controversy over a 2 crore painting, or asking a question about why a specific state government may have given a single contract to YES Bank, and if that was a political favor. Because at the end of the day, we're actually looking at a system that perhaps worked for several years, where loans were given to companies, now all of them under investigation for various scams. At some point, many of these companies seem to be interlinked, were doing all kinds of shady business with each other, multiple quid pro quo equations now under investigation, and all of this completely missed the regulator, Dipali Joshi. How is that we saw the same format in PMC Bank, where a couple of people in the leadership were railroading the entire board and giving loans wherever they felt like giving loans, left, right, and center? And that's exactly the allegation that even Chanda Kochar faces, that she favored certain companies and the loans to those certain companies, and exactly the allegation that now Rana Kapoor seems to be facing. But somehow it doesn't get caught by the regulator at that point of time.
Okay, look, it's like this. First of all, I can't comment on things which are sub judice at the moment. I mean, things which are not exactly proved. And secondly, it's a question of always doing a post-mortem or locking the stable after the horse has fled. Now, you said that the regulator did nothing. I was an ex-regulator. If the regulator did nothing, then why did the regulator sack Rana Kapoor? To use your own words, Rana Kapoor was not given an extension in 2019. Why? Because there were divergences in the non-performing assets which Rana Kapoor's balance sheet showed and which the RBI inspectors found. After that, a new man was brought to helm the bank. If I had been that new man, what would be the first thing you would do? Or if you had been that new man, you would definitely have looked at those assets which had been shown as being less non-performing than the Reserve Bank found them to be? Would you not have done that as a matter of abundant caution? Would you not on your own have done an asset quality review? Are you not supposed to hire the most expensive auditors who are supposed to audit your books? Are there no rating agencies? So what you're looking at is systemic failure. And what you should be discussing today is why it should not happen again. And let me tell you, I was involved in the closure of a bank in the year 2004 when this bank came into being, and somebody mentioned Satyam. So I was reminded of the Global Trust Bank.
Yes.
What happened in the Global Trust Bank? It's the same model. When you start giving a very high interest rate on your deposits, higher than the public sector banks are able to afford, what happens is an exponential growth in your deposits. So you are actually using your deposits to fund your credit, which is not a very, and to grow at a scorching pace is a sign for alarm bells to ring all around.
Yes.
Why did those alarm bells not ring?
Correct.
Now, the other issue is that when you are giving deposits at a very high rate, your cost of funds is going up. And when your cost of funds is going up, and when the deposits after September, there was almost a mass withdrawal of deposits, almost a capital flight, which put this bank into another corner between a rock and a hard place. Now, I can't really say. And then there were many groups to which the loans were given, like
Okay. So
Anil Dhirubhai, other groups. So why should we latch on one particular group at the moment? Let us not get into all this. Let us just see that how are
no,
we, what is going to be.
I think the investigative agencies are actually going to latch on to multiple groups. Right now, the case may have begun with DHFL, Dipali Joshi, but our sources suggest that even the dealings with ILNFS will come under scanner. Even the dealings with, DB Realty and Shahid Balwa may come under scanner. And so they are going to be looking at multiple transactions that were done during Rana Kapoor's time. But I'll pick up a few points that you raised and take them forward. And Dipali Joshi says, Biswajit Bhattacharya, that, well, the RBI did do something. They got rid of Rana Kapoor a year ago. Well, then whose job was it to, at that point, say, but why? And if there was something that he was not doing correctly, why is it that we waited for a year for an investigation to begin?
I agree with
another
you.
thing, Tanvi.
Yes, Dipali Joshi, I'll come back to you.
Another moment.
I will
Just
definitely
another
come back to you
moment.
because I just want to address a couple of
yeah.
points that you've raised, and then I will come back to you. Yes.
Thank you.
Well, I would agree with you that for the past more than 1 year, no action seems to have been taken by the regulator. You see, these kind of things are, in a way, I would agree with Madam Dipali Joshi, these are systemic issues. Now, today, there is one chairman, one managing director who has been accused of wrongdoing. Tomorrow, there may be another chairman. So, how to basically prevent this issue? So, number one point which I would like to make is that the kind of regulator, the Reserve Bank of India, the internal auditors, the statutory auditors, the entire board, you see, they have to be extremely vigilant, because this kind of a situation can come not basically overnight. This is a sum total of maladministration of past several years.
Yes.
And successively, whether it is Congress government or it is a BJP government, every successive government seems to have, neglected the kind of attention that the banking sector deserves. See, I will give you a simple example. Today, the total expenditure of the central government is 30 lakh 42,000 crores, out of which total establishment expenses of the central government is 6 lakh 9,000 crores, which is 6 trillion rupees. Now, instead of spending so much on establishment expenses of the central government, I think it is time for the central government, which no government in the past has considered this aspect, tune it down by half and plow it to the banking sector. Number one, you see, PSU banks must be strengthened, and as far as systemic failure is concerned, you see, Reserve Bank of India cannot disown the responsibility. Reserve Bank of India cannot disown the responsibility. The primary responsibility of a regulator is with the regulator. You starting from Lehman Brothers failure on 13th of September 2008, whenever there has been a failure of any bank or financial institution, invariably, you know, it is the regulators which have failed, it is the auditors which have failed, it is the rating agencies which have failed.
Yes.
And this enormous growth of these YES banks, which has been highlighted in the press, from 55,000 crores in 2014 to 2,41,000 crores in 2019, that itself should have caused an alarm to the regulators. Number two, and this kind of a, you know, arrest to a bank chairman, filing an FIR in a rush.
Yes.
And this is also for optics. You see, I am not in favor of, you know, arresting someone after treating inhuman treatment. You see, however, you know, the strong the allegations may be, you see, the human liberties cannot be tampered in this manner just for optics, because the gentleman concerned was flying very high. In fact, the day the demonetization was announced on 8th of November, he tweeted that this Prime Minister has taken a historic decision and all that. So he was in good books of all concerned. Now suddenly he has fallen from the gaze, and you slam him to such an extent, you send jitters through the spines of the entire banking industry, which is unfair.
But you say they are rushing. I would say they actually went slow. I would say that for a year, there was no investigation where they should have been.
No, investigation is one thing, but arresting and sort of parading like this is a violation of human rights.
Okay, Govind wants to come in. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, no. You know, the thing is, I think I've argued on previous shows of yours as well. I see this is an intelligence failure as well. I mean, you can say systemic failure, but systemic failure usually amounts to or adds up to almost nothing in terms of what you can really fix. I think it is an intelligence failure, and you have to look at these markets as a wider, you know, combination of many things or many, you know, many aspects rather than just one. So there is a bank which is giving a loan. Clearly, even in retrospect now, and maybe perfect hindsight, it's clear that there were several banks that were lending. That's on the supply side. On the demand side, clearly there is a real estate sector which is in stress. There are only, and anyone would tell you that if you care to ask, even 2 years ago in the city of Mumbai, that there were only 2 or 3 builders who were, you know, building and still kind of growing when maybe everyone else was slowing down.
Right.
And remember, this is the post-demonetization age or era, if you want to call it that, where generally the whole industry was stressed. So only a couple of phone calls would have put you on the right trail of builders or large borrowers who are under stress. In this case, it's real estate, or it may be some other industries, and everyone knew that. Similarly, if there were a couple of banks who were clearly stretching themselves, whether it's PMC or YES Bank or I mean, you mentioned ICICI Bank in a different context. It's very obvious that you need to, you know, focus on their balance sheets, look at every transaction carefully, and see what has gone wrong, and if there are quid pro quos or kickbacks and so on. And I think that intelligence is something every regulator should have. I mean, to call it a systemic problem, I think is oversimplifying it, because someone has to put their minds in. I think there was a leadership and talent failure everywhere, including at the bank. because they failed to raise the funds in the last 1 year.
Absolutely, and that's the whole point. And you're right. You and I have had this conversation now on multiple accounts, and every time we just run into this dead end, which where we are told, well, it's a systemic failure. Dipali Joshi, if we had learned some lessons from the GTB, where you said similar issues cropped up. And then you said there were alarm bells should have gone off when he was lending, and giving out such high risk loans. Why didn't those alarm bells go off? What happened all this while?
No, again, I will repeat that the alarm bells did go off, and because the alarm bells went off, he didn't get an extension. But I'll give you a contrary view also. Let me play the devil's advocate. When an economy is growing at a scorching pace, like you want a $5 trillion economy, you need strong, stable banks who are ready to lend. So the appetite for risk has to be there. I do not disagree that there should be an appetite for risk, but there should be adequate risk buffers. In this case, as I was explaining to you, it was a capital starved bank. While it ticked all the boxes, with all the regulatory boxes, it still it couldn't muster up enough capital. And ultimately, the next CEO was also chosen by the Reserve Bank of India. He came from the Deutsche Bank, came with very good, impeccable credentials. But the only thing was that even though money was available, money was not available at the rate at which he was willing. That is, it was not linked to the underlying share price of the Yes Bank. And Yes Bank is still, I mean, it's a bank, and the SBI now will take up 49% stake, will
Yeah.
become an anchor investor in that bank. And the bank, why did the Reserve Bank take this decision ultimately? Because it did not want a domino effect. I mean,
Okay.
it's a question of डूबेंगे तुमको भी
Yes,
ले
yes,
जाएंगे.
I agree with you. Perhaps the Reserve Bank of India didn't have any other option now but to do this and save the depositors. I'm sorry, and my apologies to all, our panelists, because we had such short time today. But I'm sure we'll have more conversations as this case continues. And I will come back to the point that I started off with. Look at the details that are emerging now, and you can ask the experts out there in the market, senior journalists, those who track the banking sector, that the financial market analysts. They will tell you that they are perhaps not surprised with the kind of money trail that's emerged. The same money going from one to the other, to the third and the fourth, and at some point coming back to the family of Rana Kapoor. That's how the system seems to have been scammed. And yes, it's a tough task that the ED and the CBI have to now prove their case. But enough and more alarm bells, had gone off. And the system should have reacted earlier, not after these many loans were given off. If from 2014 to 2015 and 2016, and then 17 and 18, you see the loan growth for Yes Bank. The entire setup of the regulator, the rating agencies, the banking analysts, all of them have failed to ask the questions that we should have at that point. And I will continue to ask this question of the Reserve Bank of India also. When will we learn our lessons and bring in better monitoring intelligence setups to ensure that this nexus at some point is broken down? Completely out of time. Thank you for joining us.